Hey guys, what's going on? So today I'm going to be talking about the 41st Armored Infantry Division of the 2nd Armored Division during Operation Cobra. This was during July of 1944, and the group pretty much fought until August. That's another operation, Operation Bluecoat, but it's a lot to get into, specifically with the Normandy campaign, and the video would end up being like an hour long if I really started to ramble, but I'm going to try and compress everything, so bear with me. And also, there's things that I'm going to miss in between just because, for time's sake, I don't want to get into it. But there is a lot to talk about with this group and with the actual battle. So, pretty much, the battle starts July 25th of 1944 and lasts until the 31st. Originally, the battle was delayed by poor weather and a few other things. And pretty much the whole point of this was to use the 2nd Armored as a exploitation force. So pretty much what they were going to do was pin the Germans where they were and keep them held up while the British on the other side of the flank helped clean up and get through their campaign. So pretty much from there, a guy named Lawton Collins comes up with the idea to make them an exploitation force during this campaign. And on the morning of July 26th, they finally joined the battle. So the day before was the initial launching. There's a whole bunch of other infantry divisions that were used during this operation, so don't just think this was the 2nd Armored single-handedly. They were supporting the right flank specifically. So there's a lot to talk about, but we're just going to be going into the 2nd Armored aspect. So the morning of July 26th, they jump into the attack. And from pretty much there on out until July 30th, they're fighting as hard as they can, and they're pretty much pushing the Germans back. Almost immediately, the entire front crumbles. The Germans didn't really have a whole lot to go off of, not a lot of resources, not a lot of men, and they end up spreading themselves very, very thin. They don't have rapid lines of reinforcements or any sort of defense, so pretty much they turn and run, and these guys cleaned up afterwards. A lot of the videos you do see, there is one of them taking prisoners out of a hedgerow. And that was the thing, was to push themselves out of the bocage. The whole point was to get out of these tightly knit hedgerows, or pretty much death traps, and move out into the open countryside and start to actually take ground. So this would have been the equipment of a standard soldier. So let's get into it. Okay guys, so I'm going to pretty much be talking about this in 3 sections. So the first section will be the uniforms, the second section will be the equipment, and the third section will be the personal items. So for this, it's pretty much just a HBT top and HBT bottoms that were camouflaged. This was a camouflage pattern made by the U.S. Army for the U.S. Army. This has nothing to do with the United States Marine Corps pattern. Often at public events or living history events, we're mistaken for Marines when you finally get to talk to people and explain that it's an Army pattern. You know, a lot of interesting rumors and stuff like that will come out. But one of the rumors is that these were discontinued because these did have a very short service life. The one thing that people like to say is that these were discontinued for the sake of guys getting shot at or friendly fire incidents of guys being mistaken as Germans, which is completely false. There is no creditable source saying, like, you know, that there were reports of guys being captured. There is one staged photograph of a British soldier carrying out a U.S. soldier. It's completely staged. It's not a legitimate photo, and it has nothing to do with the actual reports. These pretty much stopped being used once supply ran out, and once they kind of faded, I guess you really didn't need them for camouflage. If anything, you stuck out like a sore thumb in a very thick hedgerow. You would have stuck out with, you know, a faded uniform. So once these faded out, you see guys switch to wools and an M41. So we'll get into that. So back to this standard HBT top with the 2 same pockets that you see, the long style pockets on any HBT jacket. And the only difference with these is that instead of metal buttons, you see that they have plastic buttons. The pants are also, like I said, same to the HBT style. The 2 side pockets here on either side. And then, like I said before, the plastic buttons. Next is the M37 wool shirt and the M37 wool trousers. These are standard service shoes. Now, I have seen variants where it's a service shoe with a, or rough out shoe with a cap toe that's also made of the same rough out material. I haven't turned these into those yet, but I'm trying to find more information about them and see just how common they were. The other thing is the leggings. This is pretty much standard with all guys that were there. And then, like I had said before, we have the M41 jacket that was later used after the camos and all that fun stuff had disappeared. Next, we'll move on to equipment. So for equipment, it varies obviously with what you were using and what your primary weapon was as whatever rank you were. So for a standard infantryman armed with an M1 Garand, this is pretty typical of what you would see. So a lot of people like to ask what this whole shovel on the back thing is about. So there's no official Army documentation on why they did this, but from speculation, you could probably assume that this flapping on your leg constantly is very annoying. So guys had, they had a need for a shovel, especially in the bocage and the all-around, Normandy campaign. Like, there was a lot of quick slit trench digging, a lot of, moving around, and there was a lot of digging in essence. So these guys had figured out that if you slap it on your back, it's a lot less cumbersome and it's a lot less annoying. So you see guys in the 2nd Armored do this all the way up until Germany. You will see guys with M43 shovel covers on their backs, or just straight up bending the shovel over, because it's a folding entrenching tool, and sticking it through the hole or through the backs of the suspenders. But standard shovel, M36 suspenders, the cartridge belt, common, canteen cup and cover, all standard 1910, Carlisle bandage with the pouch, all that with the sulfur and the bandage in it. And then the other thing I want to mention is the haversack and musette bag. So you might be asking yourself, why is there both? Now, the whole reason is most of the pictures you see of these, they're slumped over the backs or sides of a half-track. So a lot of guys ditch them, knowing that they would come back to a half-track, or knowing that they would come back to whatever they were doing. So mixed, I'm sure it was mixed with who was carrying what, but just let it be known that both were used. The last thing I do want to talk about is the helmet. So the whole thing with the helmet... Okay, guys, so the helmets that you see in the Normandy campaign used by the 2nd Armored are pretty much as shown. So there would have been a much more abundant amount of burlap on this helmet. If you look at pictures, a lot of guys decked their helmets out, and the whole point of this burlap is to break the outline of the helmet. So I'll tell you right now, these guys did a great job. I'll throw up some pictures real quick of it. And pretty much, it's, it's just pieces of burlap stuffed in between pieces of the netting. And that's the next thing I want to get into is the netting. The netting is a 1/4 inch British netting. Common way to tell if it's the British netting versus just, some bumfuck netting is the knotted pieces here. When they're knotted like that, it's usually British made. Not always, but it's just a good way to tell. And the other thing you notice is there's no liner chin strap. The liner chin straps are really overdone in this hobby, and if you look at a lot of pictures, guys really didn't like them. They ditched them, and it was just one of those things. So if you look at pictures, you'll see guys mostly without a liner chin strap. The other thing to note is fixed bail. These guys were not a fresh unit. These guys would have had fixed bail helmets. Fixed bail helmets, I fully believe, were a standard up until about 44, 45 later. Like later in 44 and early 45 of when replacements were being given swivel bails. But I could, I'll make a whole separate video on exact timestamps on all that and stuff. It's just a generalization. So yes, that is the helmet. So now we'll move on to the personal items. Before we jump into the personal items, I just want to go over, because I put these out for a reason, I just wanted to go over that in the equipment, there are two types of bayonets used during this campaign, one being more common than the other. So you mostly will see a 10-inch bayonet, standard M1 Garand bayonet, and then you do see some guys with the long 16-inch bayonet, which I'll throw up some pictures real quick. It's definitely an eye catcher. You'll definitely notice it versus something like this. And it was just one of those things. I don't know where the supply would have came from with those and why they had them, but there are a few pictures of guys with them, so I just wanted to throw that tidbit in there. And now we'll move on to the personal items. Okay guys, so for personal items, it's really light. There's not a whole lot that I carry for this impression, just because most of it is kept in pockets. So besides a couple of hand grenades or maybe a smoke grenade, guys would have carried pretty much stuff like this. So your standard shaving kit, soap dish, a watch, shaving brush, toothbrush, a couple of D-bars, just for, you know, any sort of sustenance. We have two French guides. One's a French phrase book, and the other one is an actual pocket guide to France, things that guys might have carried just to familiarize themselves with where they were. A wallet. These are pretty common with everybody. I mean, it's a wallet. A prayer book, and a journal underneath. We also have some mail, various dates and whatnot. Standard run-of-the-mill cotton towel. This is a certain material. It's not terry cloth. It's like a straight-up cotton cloth. They're usually considered dish rags or something like that. A sewing kit, two sets of spare laces, the later and the earlier type before they kind of had the nylon, a comb, a little tiny pack of playing cards. This is a hard case for a pack of cigarettes, some razor blades, and a spare parts / cleaning kit pouch to house all your stuff for your M1. That's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to go over for personal items. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the little insight on the battle in the beginning. And yeah, so the next video I'll be making is on another impression. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video.